Back at it following an off day on Monday. Cards Camp 2019 continues. A special edition of Cards Cover 2 here from State Farm Stadium. It is practice number 5. Craig Grialou and Mike Jurecki with you in our continuing coverage, giving you live practice coverage here from the home of your Arizona Cardinals. Good afternoon here again. Back after an off day. Hope your off day, MJ, was good. I certainly enjoyed it as well. And I'm sure not as much as the players did, who were basically in pads on Saturday and Sunday and then took Monday off. And today, they're back in shells. But interesting to hear Coach Cliff Kingsbury say earlier today in speaking with the media that they hope following an off day that they pick up where they left off.
Yeah, and that's always an issue. Now we get to a little bit later in camp. Obviously, it's something you got to keep an eye on. But the players were off yesterday, so you let the bodies recover. And according to Kingsbury, I asked him, I said, what was it like, just having a day off to kind of decompress? And he said that as a football staff, they had meetings, and then they went back and looked at what they've done so far when it comes to install, and they kind of reevaluate things. So this gives them a day to kind of step away and say, where are we at as a team? But obviously he wants these guys to come out after a day off and practice hard. I mean, This is the NFL, and you want to make sure you're in great condition as a football team.
Team stretch going on as we speak here from State Farm Stadium. Let's go through the news of the day. You mentioned the coaches kind of getting together and figure out where they are and maybe what needs they need. Well, one of those needs is they added a player. Linebacker Andre Branch signed earlier today to a 1-year contract. Outside linebacker. He's been around the league for several seasons. First 4 years with the Jacksonville Jaguars, the past 3 seasons with the Miami Dolphins, wearing 49 in white, but this is someone, because of depth concerns, especially at outside linebacker, he's got a resume and perhaps maybe find his way onto the roster.
Yeah, and Branch was the guy that they actually brought in during the offseason, and it's more of a ready list, and maybe at the time they weren't ready to sign him, but obviously when Longacre decided to, the Cardinals released him, there's a spot there. And obviously it's important that Brooks Reed return, because you start looking at that depth there, clearly outside linebacker, and they still have 2 open roster spots. But, he's played defensive end pretty much in his career with Jacksonville and then Miami, so obviously it's a little bit different, but he provides depth, and we'll see if he makes the roster, because I don't think they're comfortable at that position after Jones, Suggs, and Reed. I think you may have to flood it as training camp unfolds.
6'5", 263 pounds, 25.5 career sacks, a former second-round pick out of Clemson. So, again, he does have experience here in the NFL. The other roster move was that they activated another linebacker, Dante Booker, off PUP list. He was one of those 6 that were placed on the list before the start of training camp, an undrafted free agent out of Ohio State. I think the Cardinals are high on him, someone that at inside linebacker, maybe depth, but perhaps down the road, someone that the Cardinals could count on.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point, Craig, because I'm always asking, you got 3 roster spots, not that they're going to tell me, the players they're going after, but you kind of get an idea where the needs are. And I asked about inside linebacker, and they're thrilled with Dennis Gardeck. Now, this is an opportunity for him to show that he's worthy of putting on defense. They like Zeke Turner. Joe Walker, we never talk about. He's a really good special teams player. So they feel that they're pretty good at inside linebacker. And now Booker coming back, he's got to make the team. And so obviously you got to be on the field to do it. Curious to see what kind of condition he's in today.
Mentioned former Ohio State linebacker, and of course the connection with current Cardinals linebackers coach Bill Davis, who was the linebackers coach at Ohio State. But you bring up Joe Walker, and because of Hassan Reddick not being on the field after knee surgery, Walker, Turner, Gardeck, they're all getting first-team reps alongside Jordan Hicks at inside linebacker. And you're going to probably see that at a number of different positions if a guy is out, just to figure out who fits better than someone else.
Well, I really like that rotation. I mean, Zeke Turner, he's built like a safety, and we'll see if he gets a chance to play in the box. Kind of a hybrid guy. Joe Walker, you see him in the locker room, takes his shirt off. The guy's got muscles sticking out, and he gets no love here. They got him from the Philadelphia Eagles last year. So, again, he has an opportunity to get some reps, but they feel comfortable with that position. And those 3 guys, Craig, they're the perfect age. You throw in Jordan Hicks and Hassan Reddick, that position all of a sudden was, maybe it wasn't the strength last year. I think they've changed that this offseason.
And quite the story with Gardeck and Turner, both undrafted free agents and then excelling on special teams. And that's what you like. Find a way to get your foot in the door, get on special teams, excel on special teams, and then try to increase your role. And we've seen that with Budda Baker. I mean, when he was first in this league, he was playing some defense, but he really excelled on special teams. And now look where he's at. Cardinals are expecting a lot out of him in that back end.
Well, and I know we're going to talk about him because Kingsbury talked about Trent Sherfield. I mean, he wasn't one of the top 4 or 5 receivers, even though when we look back, he probably should have been. But how did he make it? Special teams. And again, when you look at 5 to 7 guys, yeah, they're depth on the roster, but they also have a role on special teams, and it'd be nice to see Brandon Williams get out there because they need him if he's going to be a gunner this year.
Well, let's talk more about Sherfield. You brought him up, second-year player, a wide receiver who has gotten a run with that first-team offense, and Kingsbury was asked about him, and stood out to him about Sherfield was just the consistency, and that's the big thing because you can flash, you can make the highlight tape and lead off the news later on that evening, but if you're not doing it day in and day out, well, then you just become a flash in the pan and forgotten about.
Yeah, and it's difficult to learn all 4 wide receivers' positions. I mean, you line up in the slot, you got a different role than lining up on the outside. The route tree is different. I had a conversation with Trent Sherfield last year, and I think it was maybe it was as we got closer to the season, maybe it was the first, second week, and I had asked Steve Wilkes about Sherfield. And he says, he's coming on. And I went and talked to Trent after the press conference, and he said, I needed that because I've been down the last couple of days knowing that I'm pressing and I'm not playing as well as I can. Now, we all know going into year 2, he knows what to expect to be a pro. He's been around here. He's learning from Larry and Jerry Sullivan. So sky's the limit. Now, if you had to say on paper, and we'll let this play out, Fitz, Kirk, Keyshawn, now, where's Demir Bird, Farrell Cooper, and then Sherfield, and then we got some other guys, obviously Kevin White, and we got the rookies. So I wonder where he's in the mix when it comes to the wide receiver because he does play on teams.
And that's key. I mean, if you can if you can play 2 or 3 different positions, now all of a sudden you become more valuable as opposed to someone who is not on special teams.
And if they go 7, they're not going to. 7 won't be active. I mean, we could see one of the rookies inactive until he gets it going. But he could be your 5th receiver, but also he's going to be your special teams guy.
As we watch the wide receivers in action, all right, we've started this and we have not brought up Kyler Murray's name as of yet. So let's do that now because I think it's a rule, a law that you have to talk Kyler Murray at some point during the broadcast because that's where most fans' eyes turn to, and that is number 1. And I'm sure a lot of people saw it, but his interview over the weekend on Sunday with Kurt Warner, the Hall of Famer, and of course Ring of Honor member as well, working for the NFL Network. And Warner in talking with the media afterwards as well. And this is, he wasn't just talking. I mean, he had high praise for Murray, and that says a lot when it's someone, your peer, someone who played the position. But Warner said he wanted to see what he saw on film up close and personal, and he did just that.
Yeah, I mean, and I can tell you this, last year, I would talk to Kurt, during the season, and he was showing me stuff that Josh Rosen was not being able to see when it came to shadows and ghosts. So, I'm not saying he's hard on young quarterbacks, and the fact is that Murray's a dual threat, 5'10", where Warner was a guy that was very accurate, can make the throws, ID the defense. So that was high praise, and we've seen it. And one thing that I talked about it briefly last week was the ball that he throws, very catchable. But when he misses, it's right there.
Yeah.
It's not, no disrespect to some other quarterbacks we've had here, but when you miss, Stanton had he at times he would sail the ball. Logan Thomas, John Skelton. You don't see that with Murray. I mean, if he misses, it's close. And so I think when Cliff said I want him to improvise more, meaning if there's something there, take it. But this is where you're going to have the learning growth. Do it in practice. Do it against Patrick Peterson. Do it against a Larry Fitzgerald. So one thing that impressed me and really didn't see it until over the weekend is when he misses, the ball is right in that area, so we know Larry's can come down with some of those balls.
Yeah, that was something that Warner pointed out. In fact, he pointed out 3 different things when looking at Murray. One is accuracy, which we all knew. The second was the quick release, how fast the ball leaves his hands, which we've seen. And the third thing was something that on the untrained eye, it may be a little bit hard to notice, but he called it pacing. How fast does he throw the ball? Does he have the touch? Can he loft a pass over a defender's head into the arms of a wide receiver? Does he have to pick up the speed a little bit to thread a ball in through a tight window? And that is something that Warner did notice. And there was one play over the weekend, it might have been Sunday, where Murray did loft that ball right over the outstretched arms of Robert Alford into, I believe it was Christian Kirk's hands, in between another defender who was in on the play as well. But sometimes you do need to fire it in. Sometimes you need to take a little off, and you also have some touch.
Yeah, and again, I mean, it's remarkable. And I've heard this. I haven't really checked on it, but I believe someone that told me. If we go back to those off-season workouts when Cliff and Kyler were on the field and we were able to tape that early portion of practice, and the first thing that stood out to you and I when we were standing there was how fast the ball's coming out, the quick release. Well, I think they've made a little bit of an adjustment to where he's getting the ball out even quicker from what he did in the spring.
Well, that's saying something, and just how tight the ball is. It doesn't flutter. It's a spiral. It's a tight spiral every single time.
Well, and, I mean, they're showing in practice, they don't have a snap count. Okay, so everything's on a clap, and then you see that in college football. I mean, we'll see it in some stadiums. You may have to go with a silent count. But the fact that he's able to go up there and see things, but he gets rid of that ball so fast, and he's accurate. It's not like, again, he's not sailing balls. So I've been thoroughly impressed with him. Now, I know that he's a rookie quarterback, and we got a rookie head coach, but there's a lot of excitement on the horizon.
Continuing coverage here of Cards Camp 2019, a special edition of Cards Cover 2 from State Farm Stadium. One of the 14 open practices here in 2019. Cardinals will be back on the field both Wednesday and Thursday, but those practices are in the morning, 10:50 or thereabouts. We'll be joining you on Wednesday and Thursday as we continue coverage of practice here. The other player that Kingsbury was asked a lot about was Byron Murphy, someone that we have discussed here since camp began, but someone who has now become a little bit more in the spotlight because not only how much he's been thrown at as far as you got to play inside, you got to play outside, both the left and the right. So they're throwing a lot at him as you get a look at Murphy talking with defensive coordinator Vance Joseph there moments ago. But he's picking it up. They're throwing everything at him, and he's learning everything.
Yeah, and again, the Cardinals had a really high grade on him. Some thought he was the most complete corner in the draft. Yeah, he didn't go in the first round. We didn't have a lot of corners go in the first round. I want to say one, and that was Carter. And they were thrilled that he was there. They had other choices, maybe a lineman, but they stuck to their board because they had him ranked so high. And I think in the perfect scenario, obviously the way that Tremaine Brock has come on, and they trust him. So let's say he's going to be the opposite corner of Robert Alford, and that appears to be the case. I think you can hide a rookie inside when it comes to Murphy. So I think they're doing the best thing, and then when Patrick gets back, maybe we'll have some open competition over there when it comes to the cornerback position. But for the most part, it will be Peterson, Alford, and then I would think Tremaine Brock based on experience, because Kyle Odegaard on AZ Cardinals did a story with him, and he said, I'm trying to hone in on one position. I can do both, but I prefer the slot, and that's where he's kind of cut his teeth. So Patrick comes back, I think things will settle down, and if teams want to go 3 and 4 wide, you can bring in Murphy. And don't forget, he's going to play on special teams too. Yeah,
Kingsbury on Murphy earlier today acknowledged that they are asking him to do a lot. Quote, going to have to grow up fast with Pat's situation, and that's in regard to Patrick Peterson missing the first 6 games of the regular season. So Murphy, who was going to be a part of this defensive rotation, even if Peterson was available, but now that spot is even more valuable because you're going to miss 21 and have Alford on one side, Brock on another, and then Murphy as your third corner, or maybe even moving up. If he can show between now and week 1 that he can be on par or maybe better than Brock, then you can move Brock back into the slot.
Right, but I think athleticism and just youth and energy, and I mean, he's obviously got more upside than Tremaine Brock. Tremaine Brock's that veteran, steady guy that doesn't make a lot of mistakes. You hope he can cover on the outside because, Alford and Brock are going to get attacked. But Murphy's a guy that Patrick Peterson said he kind of reminds him a little bit of Tyrann Mathieu.
In terms of the versatility.
Not traits.
Yeah.
Being able to move around, play in the slot, play on the outside. Tyrann played more in the secondary, where Murphy, and Tyrann did play close to the line of scrimmage, but Murphy's going to play closer to the line, at least initially.
The other one that is certainly flashing here in training camp is Robert Alford, who we've talked about it being that number one corner those first 6 weeks and trying to figure out what do you do at that other corner position. But Kingsbury called him super competitive. He wants the ball thrown his way. And here's someone that I think really wants to have a good season, a bounce-back season, if you will, to prove everyone that he is that elite corner that there was an expectation a year ago that he was going to be that guy, but he never produced. And whether that was because of his high ankle sprain or something else, but I think he's looking to show that last season he knows he can be better.
It's almost like he's become forgotten a little bit because we're always excited about rookies and Murphy, and you look at the athleticism and the size. But this is one of the key signings in the offseason. I mean, he made a choice to come here before everything started. They've committed to him for 3 years. I just can't wait to see him and Patrick on there, but he's going to have to carry his water. But he's not a big talker, at least not in the locker room, but you could see he's very competitive on the football field. Every play he's trying to get better at. It's a cliche, but you could see it out there, and he works hard in practice.
Now, just beyond where the defensive backs are working, the far side of the field, the linebackers, and I just want to go back to a conversation that we had with Chandler Jones on the Red Sea Report. We asked him about some of those younger players that have really kind of made or tried to make a name for themselves, and the guy that he pointed out was Terius Dora. I know Dave Pash is a big fan of Terius Dora during the preseason, and that's something that Chandler was talking about, that he's learned how to be a pro, staying on the field early, late, and watching film as well. And you talk about outside pass rush, there's Chandler Jones, Terrell Suggs, Brooks Reed, and then the question is who? Now, how many do you need versus how many are capable of doing the job? But Dora might be someone that you could throw into the mix.
Well, I got to think 4, because if you're going to go 5 inside linebackers, I mean, you got Hicks and Reddick, and then we talk about Turner, Walker, and then Gardeck. So I think they go 5 in the middle because you are playing a 3-4, and then outside backers. But you'd like to have 5 on the roster and then rotate the 4. Cameron Melville, I think he showed a little bit last year. I know he had that 1 sack, but Dora is always flashed in the preseason, and what is he wearing? 54 now.
54.
So he's got that linebacker number versus the defensive line number. So, but hey, listen, I think that 4th spot is wide open.
The other one, how about number 45, Pete Robertson, who I think really stood out in Sunday's practice because of Jones and Suggs getting veteran days off Saturday and Sunday. Robertson has really made the most of his time. Former Texas Tech Red Raider. He was there when Kingsbury was the head coach. Didn't get recruited. He was already there at Texas Tech. But if you just watch him, especially on pass rush drills, he is really fast off the edge.
Well, he's the guy that was getting first-team reps in the offseason. When they were out there just going through some individual, open portion stuff. So, we know that Suggs wasn't there a whole lot in the offseason. I think that was the agreement. But Robertson was getting reps with the first team. And again, that's you only can take advantage of the opportunity. So, I hate to say to flood the position because you want to go with the best 4 or 5 guys, but I like what they have there. Now it's a matter of some of these guys staying healthy and being productive.
Continuing coverage of Cards Camp 2019 here on this special edition of Cards Cover 2. Craig Grialou and Mike Jurecki inside an air-conditioned State Farm Stadium. If you're interested in coming out, watching practice, go to azcardinals.com/Cards Camp for your complete training camp schedule. Again, back on the field both Wednesday and Thursday morning. They will be outside on Friday. That is a closed practice, And then Saturday at 1 o'clock is the red-white practice. One other note, we've been talking about this throughout last week. It's worth an update here, and that is the 100 footballs that have been placed around the state, the Surprise and Delight campaign to celebrate 100 years of NFL football. Those footballs were distributed on Monday around the state. Here we are on Tuesday. A handful have already been found, including one of the gold footballs. It was found by Kenneth from Phoenix at Papago Park. Now, those 3 gold footballs, MJ, that means 1, you have preseason tickets to the Raiders game, and then 2, you are now eligible to win season tickets. Of those 3 recipients of the gold footballs, one of those 3 will win season tickets for the 2019 campaign.
And if I'm not mistaken, Kenneth is he's born in Arizona. He's been a Cardinal fan, so it couldn't happen to somebody that obviously follows the team. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah, and these footballs located outside their visible parks, landmarks, places of business, and buildings. azcardinals.com for more information. And yes, there is a Google map to kind of help you along the way, help you find these footballs to within 100 feet. So it's not like you're walking outside and just start somewhere random and looking for a NFL football.
Yeah, and I would follow the Cardinals on social media, azcardinals.com, obviously Facebook, and then Instagram, because they update it. And right around 9 a.m. until Friday, they're going to release another set of footballs. 19 were found yesterday. Maybe we get the similar number today, but we do have 1 gold football that's been captured. And
the Cardinals are encouraging fans to post pictures, letting them know where and when they found these footballs using the hashtag NFL100. As we continue looking at practice here at State Farm Stadium, a couple of notes about the offense and specifically about the offensive line, because it's the one position battle that is remaining on that offensive side outside of which receivers are taking, and that is the center position between Mason Cole and A.Q. Shipley. According to Kingsbury this morning, that's a battle that might not be decided until, quote, towards the end of preseason, unquote, because they want to see who separates themselves and give both Mason and A.Q. all the time potentially needed to separate themselves.
And I'm glad that AQ's healthy, because he's getting a fair shot right here. The Cardinals obviously decided to do the right thing when he tore his ACL. He worked so hard to get that starting position, but just a small sample. When you start looking at some of the one-on-one drills, Shipley is holding his own. Cole is still getting pushed back a little bit. So, again, 111 starts. We got to go back to that rookie quarterback. I'm not saying Cole's not the future. He can play guard. He can play center. But just on paper, it looks like Shipley's healthy now, and he's winning some of those one-on-one matchups. Not to say Cole can't, but I would agree with Cliff. This needs to play out. Maybe we get to that 3rd preseason game. Who gets to start, plays the most snaps. But Cole's going to be active on game day. You would think so if he's your backup center guard. And then you throw in Corey Cunningham. They only want to dress 7. So there's a role for him. But right now, just based on what I've seen, small sample, I think Shipley may have the edge.
And this coaching staff is doing a great job as far as splitting reps almost down the middle. Now, I haven't kept track of first-team reps versus second-team reps, but they are both getting looks at the first team and second team. It's not just one working with Kyler Murray and then the other one is working with Brett Hundley. They're both getting equal time.
Well, and if you want to have a fair shot, you have to have them out there with the starters. Now, Cole's going to get some second-string snaps just because you want to get him some reps. And they have, they usually have 15 to 18 guys in camp, so you can go 4 deep at a lot of positions, especially the flexibility. So it's important that he's evaluated just like Shipley is with the starting quarterback. It's not going to be ideal, because sometimes Hundley comes in and they keep the same line, but they change the receivers.
It's just going to be a question of, if all things are equal, do you want the experience or do you want the youth and have Cole and Murray kind of develop together? Although the one thing about Mason Cole is he does have that ability to play the guard position, so his versatility maybe gives him a leg up as far as when it comes to other guys' roster spots. But right now I'm of the opinion that it's A.Q. Shipley just because of that experience, someone that can help out with the line calls.
And he's healthy. I mean, he obviously they were giving Cole reps in the offseason because they didn't want to rush Shipley back. The thing is, though, you wonder, I don't know how much pulling they're going to do because everything's getting rid of the ball, but you would think Cole would be better sometimes if he had a pull because younger, more athletic, but obviously they're going to try to protect the quarterback, open up holes for David. So I would think he'd be more stationary than pulling from a center position.
Let's pan over here towards the right and look at the quarterback wide receiver drills because, again, people want to see offense, and that is what sells. And certainly Kyler Murray and his relationship, the timing routes with these wide receivers, and a name that we haven't talked a lot about but has gotten some run with that first team is Farrell Cooper, who we know can play special teams with the return game, former Pro Bowler, but someone right now who might be in that mix amongst the top 6, top 7 wideouts.
Yeah, and if you look at and you're watching the wide receivers, the gentleman you see closer to us by the 20-yard line, that's Jerry Sullivan. He's a longtime NFL assistant, guru when it comes to working with the wide receivers. And you watch David Rye, he's on the other side by the 10-yard line, and they're making sure these receivers run the right routes and make sure they get out of their breaks. So I think they're well coached there. Farrell Cooper and Damiere Byrd, Craig, I think they're both quality of making it, but I think if you're going to have Cooper or Byrd as your kick returner and your punt returner, they'll be on the roster, but I don't know if you can keep both guys considering Sherfield. You got 3 draft picks. You got Kirk and Fitz, and we know David Johnson's going to be involved, so it'd be interesting to see. But I like Farrell Cooper. He's done it at a high level with the Rams. Damiere Byrd's kind of bounced around, but Byrd is a guy that I think you can use in the slot. And if you're looking out there now, Damiere Byrd, number 14, he's a guy that can take the top off the defense, and that's what you're looking for from that slot position besides a shallow crossing route yards after catch.
Yeah, Byrd, obviously the speedster, and then Cooper is just a big physical inside guy that might be able to out-muscle, whether it's a slot corner or a linebacker that might be in coverage. So interesting that you bring it up, and we always talk about the top 6, top 7, but perhaps you have to go even further within that 7 guys that you want to keep and go, okay, if there are 2 guys that kind of do something similar, all right, which one do we take and in which one don't we use just because we can't, because you've got 3 rookies that you drafted that we all anticipate making the team.
Yeah, and I love this drill, even though we're getting to the end of it. Every quarterback has the ball, and every guy's running a different route. You got Farrell Cooper, number 12. You obviously have the undrafted free agent, 83.
A.J. Richardson.
Yeah, we had a chance to talk to him. He's got the body of Anquan Bolden, not comparing him. And you got David Johnson right here. You got some of the tight ends going off for passes. Obviously, some of the running backs. So this is a good drill because everyone's getting work in, and everyone has to learn to throw different players on the field. Of course, Chase Edmonds, I think he's looked really fast in this training camp.
Yeah, as we continue here from State Farm Stadium, continuing coverage of Cards Camp on this special edition of Cards Cover 2. This is where it all begins. And the question is, these are valuable reps, and Kingsbury believes that maybe they are more valuable than preseason game reps. Some teams have already come out and announced, or some players, I guess I should say. Falcons wide receiver Julio Jones says he's not playing at all in the preseason. Kingsbury was asked, like, hey, have you guys discussed what your plan is? Don't forget, the first preseason game is a week from this Thursday when the Chargers come to town here at State Farm Stadium. But they have had some early discussions, but nothing definitive as of yet. Kingsbury mentioned that some guys may want to play and knock the rust off or work on that timing. But there is that balance as far as how many is enough, and then how many it doesn't become too much to where you suffer an injury.
Well, Julio's been dealing with that toe injury, and he's trying to get a new contract. They have 5 preseason games, okay? They're playing on Thursday night against the Broncos in the Hall of Fame game. That game's on Thursday now. In case they have any snafus, they can move it to the weekend. Anyway, so I get it, and he's looking for a new contract. It's a little bit different there. I talked to Larry after practice, and I said, Cliff hasn't decided how he's going to divvy up the snaps. And Larry said, I would like to get a couple snaps with Kyler. He said, I play with a lot of different quarterbacks, but when you get into a preseason game, even though it's not the regular season, I want to see how he's going to react to me. So Larry sounds like he's on board. I don't know how much, and we're going to find out next Thursday when they play the Chargers, right? So But, I mean, Patrick Peterson, do you play him in the preseason? And people are going to say, well, he's got to knock off the rust. He's going to be in great shape when he comes back. Is he in football shape? We're going to find out. Terrell Suggs, I mean, what does he have to prove? I mean, AQ Shipley, obviously he's fighting for a job. I think if you've been in the league 10 years or more, and you got to be you have to be secure on the roster. But I'm curious to see, the third preseason game where it's going to be in Minnesota at 10 a.m. our time, noon there on a Saturday. That's the biggest time we see veterans and players play. And then the fourth game, we're not going to see anybody.
And I think a lot of it comes down to how do those players, how do those units, offense, defense, look first drive, second drive? Is it efficient? Is it 3 and out? Are you making a lot of mistakes, or does everything look crisp? Now, I'm done with as far as trying to figure out making conclusions based off the preseason, and the perfect example is a year ago, because you would have thought the Cardinals would have been anything but a 3-win team just looking at what they did in the preseason.
15, 16 forced turnovers?
Yeah, the defense
David
was
Johnson,
a takeaway machine.
Mike
David Johnson,
he was going to the Pro Bowl. They had 2 really good guards at the time, Pugh and Upati, and unfortunately they got hurt. Yeah, I understand. But, they have 12 draft picks, you mentioned earlier, with Jalen Thompson, okay? They have about 23 rookies in general, undrafted free agents. Those guys are going to play. And sometimes it does come down to that fourth preseason. I remember Rodney Gunter was playing in the fourth preseason game last year.
Well, some guys just have to, because you can't sit everyone. Someone has to play those preseason games, and especially, that second half of that fourth and final one in Denver this season. But, it's a very difficult decision with a head coach, a coaching staff, and I'll even involve the training staff as well, to figure out how much do you need, because it is a new offense. You are learning things differently on defense, even though they are going back to a 3-4. And then, of course, you want to make sure that you protect yourselves and you're not putting guys into undue situations to where there's a potential for injury.
Yeah, but when I say this, though, I want to be clear. When it comes to Kyler Murray, he knows the system. He's been in this system. Well, whether it's Oklahoma with Lincoln Riley or Cliff Kingsbury, maybe a little bit of what he had at Texas Tech, and then we go back to Texas A&M. So everything I said about young guys getting reps, I'm not including Kyler Murray, just because he knows now speed of the game is the first thing he said that was the biggest adjustment.
Yeah, and that's something that he'll be able to get a little bit through the first 3 preseason games here as we come to you from State Farm Stadium, continuing coverage of Cards Camp 2019, this special edition of Cards Cover 2. And before we head on out of here this afternoon, MJ, do you play video games?
No.
You don't play Madden?
I'm old school.
Yeah, me too.
Atari.
I'm not, Atari, as our producer was talking to us beforehand, Pitfall. Big Pitfall. Now that's
Donkey Kong.
That's true old school right there for those
Donkey
that
Kong
might be Cardinal fans going back in the day. But certainly Madden NFL 19 is a huge deal, not only for football fans, but for all video gamers out there. And it's certainly become a discussion point. We spent, 2 or 3 shows in the offseason talking about player ratings, especially amongst the rookies, and how players get upset. Oh, I'm rated too low, or I'm not ahead of this guy. Well, we found something interesting, that it's not just the players who are complaining about their ratings. The head coaches sometimes have an issue as well. Kingsbury earlier today asked about the Madden ratings. It comes out that the offense is rated as a whole lower than the defense, and he was asked to respond to that. Well, he went a different direction and talked about his own rating. Quote, "I want to get adjusted on looks ratings. I look like I'm on the Walking Dead," unquote. So
have you seen the picture?
I have seen the picture.
He looks a little heaver.
It's fuller on the cheeks.
Yeah.
It's you can check out Arizona Cardinals social media on Twitter and Facebook to take a look at the picture. But that's something that is done during the annual league meetings. This year it was at the Biltmore. But the coaches get these camera scans just like the players do, and apparently Coach Kingsbury not too happy with his look rating. which I didn't know existed.
Okay, just to be fair, that was at the end of the press conference. So
yes, it was. It was not the first question.
But it's like number 4 on ESPN right now on their top stories.
As they say, it went viral.
It went viral. But it was one of the last questions to end the day, and he wanted to answer it. So in fairness, it was a good question. Great timing on Cliff's part.
So we'll follow along on see if that look rating gets adjusted here in 2019. And with that, we'll sign off here on this special edition of Cards Cover 2. Special thanks to our producer, Jim Almohandro, Devin Henry, working the camera. For my partner, Mike Jurecki, I'm Craig Grialou. Don't forget, Cards Camp 2019 continues Wednesday and Thursday mornings, about 11 a.m., and we'll be joining you then here on Cards Cover 2.